So, traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. This is the open space, the office that we're gonna have, the new office here in the Philippines. It's gonna be the most advanced trading center in all of the country. Soon we're gonna be opening others as well in Singapore, Malaysia, other places as well. Super excited. Many of you obviously only trade Forex, which in my opinion is the worst market for beginners to trade. You guys have seen all the scams and things in Forex here in the Philippines and in other places as well, but now that I'm here a lot more often, I see everything and hear everything. So super excited to kind of share this space with you. I think the next time I'm kind of standing here or walking around, or this will be the area of the class, offices. We'll have a really fancy TVs and ticker board like the traders and everything. The main door will be over there. This will be the open space, and I'm just super excited. We've done great things in places like United States and Latin America and Brazil and Egypt. And now it's time for you guys to become consistently profitable traders with better markets. Obviously, you can risk a lot less money than you normally would have. And I'm really excited to be able to go ahead and start this project with you guys. So just wanted to do a short video to show you kind of the before and after, because 30 days from now, this will be completely done. And we'll start doing free events here, trainings, and we'll bring the traders, the best master traders from the United States to be able to trade alongside you guys live. So super excited about that. We'll see you soon. So don't forget to subscribe. Also reminding you guys, we do have the podcast available on Spotify. Look up Day Trading Academy on iTunes as well. You can also download the audio directly from the website. Just go to the blog, daytradingacademy.com, and then you can see the link there under the YouTube video. Overall this week, U.S. stocks are lower on Monday based on downbeat data from Eurozone manufacturing activity, especially Germany, which is obviously concerning everybody about global growth. U.S. stocks are mixed on Tuesday, lifted by tech shares as the U.S. government trade talks are resuming with China. One of the things that I've been doing a little bit differently is I've been taking out a lot of information when it comes to the China trade war or Brexit or Venezuela, and I want to get your opinion on this. If you can comment, whether you're listening to this on YouTube or Instagram or even on the podcast, if you guys want to come and shout me out. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. What I feel is what's happening essentially is, 1 week we're on, another week we're off, another week we're on and off, right? And it just kind of goes back and forth. So I generally haven't talked a lot about that in depth anymore because I just think it just goes back and forth. So I think it's better that way. If you guys want to hear the details of everything, if they're going to come to a meeting, if they cancel the meeting, all that stuff, let me know and I'll include it. But I figured it's probably better to just wait if there's actual big news like they made a deal or something along those lines. Other than that, the stock market plummeted after House Speaker Pelosi announced a formal impeachment inquiry against President Trump, stemming from a Ukraine whistleblower case. This is the stocks first began selling off on Trump's speech at the UN, which he called for fair and reciprocal trade, reiterating his views once again about China, how China's gaming the system, pointing out to intellectual property theft and currency manipulation. So that's definitely something that's one of the things that Trump is doing essentially, just so you guys know, and just want to throw this out there as well. Never going to get political on the show. If you guys love Trump, hate Trump, love Obama, hate Obama, left to right, black, white, center, purple, green, doesn't matter. I want you guys to just learn kind of what these news mean and how to connect the dots. So just remember that. The stocks were lower on Thursday and Friday as well. U.S. indices were lower for the week, with the Dow going down 0.43%. S&P 500 went down 1.01%, and the NASDAQ went down 2.24%. And international markets, European markets, are mostly lower. Istanbul is the biggest winner at 4.9%, and the losers were generally, other winners as well, were generally under 1% as well. And Latin American markets in Canada, that's how I always say it instead of Canada, the Merval in Argentina was down 4.09%, and the positive one is the Santiago index at 0.53%. Africa and Middle Eastern markets are mixed, and Egypt went down 6.39%. Saudi Arabia went up 1.27%. And Asia and Australian markets are mostly lower, with the Chinese SEC being the biggest loser at 2.52%. India Sensex, biggest winner, 2.13%. Shout out to all my traders in the Philippines where we are right now. Great event so far today on Saturday, our masterclass. Let us know if you guys have any questions in regards to that. The Philippines was down 0.67%. The owner of the New York Stock Exchange and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency news on Sunday, the name of the company is called Intercontinental Exchange, announced that they're going to start launching a new Bitcoin futures exchange, or product, I should say, that's going to compete directly with the CME Group. The CME Group is the largest exchange operator in the world, which is where we mostly trade. We teach guys how to trade on the S&P 500 and other futures markets. They launched the Bitcoin futures in December of 2017, and this is actually part of a new venture called Bakkt. It's B-A-K-K-T, whose ultimate goal is to make crypto sufficiently transparent and regulated for individuals to use in retail purchases. Overall this week, the market cap for Bitcoin, which has the biggest capitalization, fell 2%, 8,364 in early trading on the news. It plunged as much as 15% on Tuesday, briefly going below 8,000, and it had its biggest one-day drop since July 16th, but recovered from the losses because the traders are blaming bad reception about the situation with Bakkt. That's how you pronounce it. Overall for the week, Bitcoin is down 23.48%, 8,211.06. But don't worry, it's still going to get to 50,000 this year. Don't worry. Keep the hope. Keep the hope. Other than that, financial and banking news, U.S. and Iran tensions escalate. U.S. is deploying a lot more forces in the Middle East after, obviously, the oil strikes in Saudi Arabia, and to, let's say, protect its interests overseas. The Iran Central Bank has already been sanctioned, but it's now being designated for the first time as a monetary authority that's been blacklisted by the United States for its ties to terror. Argentina's volatile markets are somewhat subdued by capital controls that were imposed. There, obviously, remember, there was a huge sell-off after the primaries, which indicated that Macri's competition, the other side, well, let's just say Macri is more to the right, open markets, capitalism, and the ones that are coming in are more closed markets to the left, those kind of different mentalities. So after the primaries, the markets and investors obviously think that it's not going to be a good thing, so the markets collapsed. The peso, the currency in Argentina, went to a record high as well. And now even though he is more market friendly, or he's considered by the public and investors to be more market friendly, he had to delay debt payments and also reimpose currency controls. In commodities, shares of the oil producers tumbled in Asia after crude futures ended far lower on Tuesday, dropping by over 3%. There was a report that Saudi Arabia restored most of its oil output at 11.3 million barrels per day. The kingdom is expecting to return to full production next week. Crude oil futures fell further at 1% on Wednesday, with the U.S. prices going to 57 a barrel, below 57, and international Brent just above 62. Key oil freights in the Middle East to Asia surged 28% on Friday after the United States rattled the markets with they allege this company called Costco, which is a Chinese giant, for their involvement in ferrying crude out of Iran. So basically, with the increase in prices, it means that one trip from the Middle East to Asia cost an extra $600,000 per trip. So I don't know if you guys know, but the majority of products in the world are actually moved inside, on land. They're by freight, the big trucks, the semis. Well, they have to get from China to the U.S. somehow, right? And that's mostly by boat. So that affects quite a bit the movement of things. Overall, for the week, crude had its worst weeks since July. U.S. crude went down 3.90% at 55.91. International Brent went down 4.39% at 61.91. And precious metals are lower for the week. Gold is down 1.4%. Silver is down 2.67%. In political news, the UK Supreme Court ruled that Prime Minister Johnson's suspension of Parliament is illegal. So now he's left between a rock and a hard place. He has to apologize to the Queen for misleading her. and also his request to have it suspended, and now a lot of the members of parliament can now return immediately. Left with little option, but now he has to agree with a new withdrawal package, or he can find, essentially this is really the only thing that he can do to fulfill his pledge of taking Brexit or taking the UK out of the EU by October 31st, which is what he promised on his campaign trail. The Spanish acting Prime Minister Sanchez's Socialist Party is going to fall even shorter of a full majority after the repeat election on November 10. Spain has had a trouble having a stable government for years, with mainstream parties and newcomers struggling over the past 5 years to have political deals. In economic news, factory activity in Germany is now slowing to levels not seen since the financial crisis a decade ago. At the current trajectory, the economic activity is going to see little growth before the end of 2019, and a recession is mostly likely. Very, very significant news, because remember that Germany is the 4th largest economy in the world and the most important economy in all of Europe. So if Germany has a problem, meaning that they're not growing, they're contracting, that's what a recession is, right? That's going to affect all of Europe. Once it affects all of Europe, then obviously it starts spreading around. Altogether, the last time I looked at the numbers, Europe should be the 2nd largest economy overall after the United States. But either or, 1, 2, or 3 is China, US, and Europe, and Europe is one of the biggest trade partners to both China and the US, so it's a really big problem. Consumer confidence fell by the most in 9 years in September, which is far more than expected. Americans are seeing economic outlooks darken in the face of the U.S.-China trade war. Remember that 2/3 of American GDP, meaning that 66% of the movement in the economy, is consumer demand. So if consumer confidence is down, people are not going to go out and buy stuff, which means that the economy isn't going to move anymore. Really bad. In corporate news, Apple is bringing back more production to the U.S. It's going to manufacture its new Mac Pro, the most powerful computer, priced at $6,000 in Austin, Texas, and it plans to invest $350 billion by 2023 in the U.S. And Anheuser-Busch InBev is set to pull off the world's 2nd largest initial public offering of 2019. Uber's 8.1 million IPO is the biggest this year, and they're going to announce that they're going to have their IPO in Asia at $3.44, and they want to be able to go ahead and raise about $5 billion. In trade news, China has granted new waivers to private and domestic firms to be able to buy soybeans from the U.S., quite a bit of soybeans as well. U.S. President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Abe signed a limited trade deal. It's going to cut tariffs on U.S. farm goods, Japanese machine tools, and other products. The first phase is going to open up U.S. products worth about $7 billion to the Japanese market. It's going to cut listen to this, it's going to cut Japanese tariffs on American beef, pork, wheat, and cheese. I know that I believe, my personal opinion is that tariffs aren't good for anybody. But I don't believe that Trump is doing it just out of spite. I think that he's doing it as a calculated move. Remember that Trump actually wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. So whether you love or hate Trump, he's producing results in this aspect. If you want to say no in other aspects, that's fine. But essentially, he threatens the tariffs or he puts them on. And then obviously somebody like Japan, who already doesn't have a very good economy, growth, I should say, in their economy as a whole, they're making agreements because cutting off, for example, the car industry in Japan, which is one of the largest, is a big hit to their economy. So he basically uses that as a negotiation tactic and says, if you don't drop the tariffs on all these other U.S. products, then we're going to put tariffs on this. And then you guys can see that literally he dropped the tariffs, and now it's going to open up a huge amount of money to U.S. consumers because they're going to be able to sell more in Japan. Just so you guys can understand what, in my opinion, Trump is doing with all these tariffs. China is a bit of a different situation because China wants to bring down the U.S. and be the #1 top dog. So obviously they're not going to bow down as easy, and there's obviously a big fight going on, right? Other than that, EU and Japan are signing an infrastructure deal on Friday to coordinate transport, energy, and digital products and trying to have an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The EU is concerned about the Chinese investment model, which it lends countries money for projects that they don't need, especially poor countries, and now they end up owing money to China, and then China basically owns them. Technology, Japan is seeking to promote development of hydrogen energy globally. They say that they have 30 countries on board for the initiative and want to set up 10,000 hydrogen refueling stations worldwide within 10 years. Tesla's version 10 software update includes Smart Summon, which basically, if you can see your car in the parking lot or you're within distance to see it, you can call your car and it will come to you automatically. I gotta admit, it's pretty cool. Other than that, Tesla also announced that they might have news about their pickup truck that's coming out, which is supposed to be sometime in November, I think, Elon Musk said. British tour operator Thomas Cook, after a 178-year reign, has gone bankrupt. They left hundreds and thousands of travelers stranded overseas. There's a government authority now in England that's helping all of those citizens get back home. They eliminated some 21,000 jobs, and also testing Europe's right to extend laws beyond its borders. There was a law 5 years ago that was ruled against Google called the right to be forgotten. And essentially, if somebody requested Google remove the information online, Europe was mandating that they remove it everywhere online, not just in Europe, like in the whole world. Well, now the new Supreme Court says that they need to remove it in Europe, but they don't have to remove it for the rest of the world. And international events, UK, Germany, and France are now backing U.S. and blame Iran for the attack on Saudi oil facilities, urging Iranian government to agree to new talks with world powers. Iran now is also willing to give reassurances on not seeking nuclear arms and will accept changes to its 2015 nuclear accord. Another thing, for example, that Trump did, he removed the U.S., put on the sanctions, and now this is seen as a big win, because if they're willing to come to the table now, which before they weren't willing, to come to the table, that means that it's affecting their economy quite a bit, the sanctions that were placed. And obviously, they don't want to have domestic instability in Iran, because then that would pressure a regime change, which is essentially what the U.S. wants. Thousands of Indonesian students rallied for a third day on Wednesday to protest a new law that wants to come out that I told you guys last week, that it would be illegal to have extramarital sex and insulting the president's honor. And other than that, China has quickly become the largest international tourist center of any country in the world. Over the last 2 decades, the number of Chinese overseas travelers rose by over 25 times, 130 million visitors in 2017. Chinese tourists contributed an estimated $250 billion to overseas economies, double the figure for U.S. tourists and triple that of Germany. And Chinese government is attempting to capitalize that on the economic clout. Obviously, they want to politicize it to be able to get what they want. Saudi Arabia may double its stake in offering its Aramco much-awaited IPO. Before they were going to do 5%. They now are thinking and want to try to do 10%. They're hoping for a valuation of $2 trillion, which would bring in $200 billion, which is the largest IPO in history. The next largest IPO is Alibaba at about $25 billion just 5 years ago. Chinese growing military power has replaced North Korean belligerence, a main security threat to Japan. There's an annual defense review that they had in Tokyo saying that even though North Koreans may have nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles, the cost of defending Japan is continuing to rise for both the U.S. and Japanese due to the rising threat of China. And other than that, the Internet Association reports that rapidly growing internet sector is accounting for $2.1 trillion of the U.S. economy in 2018, 10% of the nation's GDP. If this is true, this would be the 4th largest sector of the U.S. economy after real estate, government, and manufacturing. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I hope you guys like The Office. We'll see you next week.